All right, in this section, we're still going to be dealing with polynomials, and first of all, we're going to look at dividing the polynomials, and we're going to actually look at it two different ways. The first method that we're going to look at is just going back to long division, which is going to follow the same process of long division that you learned how to do in like middle school, when you use long division to divide numbers, except you're going to use it to divide polynomials. Now, in setting this one up, what you're going to need to do is take what you're dividing by, which is going to be your divisor, and we're going to write this out front. And then underneath what's referred to as your dividend, of course, will be what you're dividing into, which is this trinomial. Okay, now what you're going to ask yourself to get started, you're going to take the first term that's out front and the first term that you have underneath, and I want you to ask yourself, what do I need to multiply the x by to get 9x squared? So x times what equals 9x squared? And that would have to be 9x. So we're going to put 9x on the top. Now we've got to take what we've put here on the top and we've got to multiply it times both terms that are out front. So 9x times x is 9x squared. 9x times -1 is negative 9x. Now at this point you have got to subtract. Now I'm putting it in parentheses because you've got to make sure that you are subtracting both terms. So you've got 9x squared minus 9x squared, which is 0. And you do want this first column of subtraction here to always give you 0 if you've done everything correctly. Okay, so now I've got to take -21 and subtract -9. So don't just do -21 minus 9, you got to do minus a negative, okay? So -21 minus a -9 is going to give you a -12. So this will be -12x. Okay, bring down your next term. Okay, so now you ask yourself, what do I need to multiply this first term in order to get the first term here? So what do I multiply x by to get -12x? And that would just have to be a -12. So -12 times x is -12x. -12 times -1 is a +12. Okay, and then we're going to subtract. So -12 minus -12 will give you 0. This first column is going to always subtract to be 0 if you're doing things correctly. Then I have -20 minus 12, which is going to give me -32. All right, so you're done. All we like is writing out the answer. Of course, you know that you're done because you don't have any more terms out here to bring down. So this actually represents your remainder, the -32. Okay, so the way I want you to write your answer out, you need to write down what you have across the top. And then you're going to put a plus sign. And then you take your remainder and you're going to divide that by the divisor, which is what you're dividing by, the x minus 1. So this would be the correct way to write out your answer for this. Now, the only other variation of this that you might come across, like if you're checking your homework answers or working a quiz a little bit later, is because this is negative, you actually could just change this to a minus sign, because you're adding a negative number. So same thing that you've always been taught. If you're adding a negative, it is just the same thing as subtraction. So this could be a minus, And if that were the case, then you wouldn't keep the negative here. This would just be 32 over x minus 1 if you change this to a minus, okay? And, you know, you can write it either way as far as for me, but just making you aware of what you might see as choices, you know, when you're looking at multiple choice, like concerning the quiz. Okay, let's look at another one. So this is going to follow the same process. I actually have one extra term here, so we'll have one extra step to have to do. Okay, setting this one up. Okay, just like a while ago, you take your divisor, you write it out front. Underneath, this will be your dividend. Okay, so first term, first term. So what do you need to multiply x by to get 3x cubed? So that would need to be 3x squared. Okay, so now take your 3x squared that you've put on the top and you're going to multiply it times both terms that are out front. So 3x squared times x is 3x cubed. 3x squared times 2 is 6x squared. Okay, so now we're going to subtract. So 3x cubed minus 3x cubed is 0. Of course, this is negative 1, so we have negative 1 minus 6. So that's going to give me negative 7x squared. Okay, bring down your next term, which is the minus 7x. Okay, so now what do I need to multiply the x by to get the negative 7x squared? And that would have to be a negative 7x. Okay, so now taking this, multiplying it times both terms out front. So negative 7x times x is negative 7x squared. Negative 7x times 2 is negative 14x. And now we're going to subtract. So negative 7 minus negative 7 will give you the 0. But now you've got negative 7 minus negative 14. So that's going to give you a positive 7. Okay, we got one more term to bring down. So we've got to bring down the plus 6. Okay, so now what do you need to multiply the x by to get 7x? And that would just be a positive 7. Okay, so now positive 7 times both terms out front. So 7 times x is 7x. And 7 times 2 is 14. And we subtract. So 7x minus 7x is 0. And then I have 6 minus 14, which will give me negative 8. Okay, so writing out your answer, you have what's across the top. Okay, put a plus sign, and then your remainder over your divisor. So this would be your answer. Okay. Okay, we're going to look at one more, and there is something different about this next one as far as having to set up the problem. All right, so setting this one up. Okay, so we've got the x minus 4 that we're dividing by, so we're going to put that out front. Now, where this one's going to be different is actually when we're putting in what's called our dividend. Of course, your first term that you have here is x to the third. Now, what's supposed to come after a third power is a second power. And since this does not have x to the second power, you have to fill in for that term, like fill in the gap. So if that term is not here, then it's not there because the coefficient was a 0. Okay, so when you're missing a term, you're going to fill it in with plus 0x to whatever the power needs to be. Okay, next would be your first power, which you do have this. And then last would be your constant, okay? So whatever the largest exponent is, you've got to represent every single one of them. So third power, second power, first power, and of course your constant. And you can even be missing your constant. If you're missing this term right here, you have got to put a plus 0. So start with the largest power, have everything represented all the way down to the constant. Okay, so now what do I need to multiply x by to get x cubed? And that would be x squared. So x squared times x is x cubed. X squared times the negative 4 is negative 4x squared. And then we're going to subtract. So x cubed minus x cubed is 0. 0 minus negative 4 is a positive 4. Okay, bring down the minus 13x. So now what do you need to multiply x by to get 4x squared? So that would be a 4x. So 4x times x is 4x squared. 4x times negative 4 is negative 16x. And now we've got to subtract. So 4x squared minus 4x squared is 0. Negative 13 minus negative 16 is a positive 3. Okay, bring down the minus 12. Now what do you need to multiply x by to get 3x? And that would just be a positive 3. Okay, so now the 3 times both terms out front. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And now subtract. So 3x minus 3x is 0. But negative 12 minus negative 12 is also 0. So in this case, it just divides evenly. You have a remainder of 0. So your answer, if your remainder is a 0, then actually all that you're going to see as your answer will be what you have across the top. Like you would not have to put the plus 0 over the divisor. If you did, it would be correct, but you wouldn't have to.